Did you start thinking about graphic design at that point in time as like a kid?
Yeah, so during that time, I think freshman year was when we started really getting into computer games because that's when I started meeting a lot of new friends, making a lot of new friends. I came into the United States when I was 13 years old, so right in the middle of like seventh grade and eighth grade. So I landed right in eighth grade. They put me in special English classes because at that point they said that I didn't know English, but I did. I knew enough to defend myself. But
Sure.
they put me in those classes after I went into high school. I I got transferred into regular classes. That's when I started making a lot of new friends. Um, and obviously, all my friends were all the nerdy kids. We used to call ourselves the Breakfast Club back, back in the day, because we were like the outcasts and the nobody talked to us. I was like, okay, cool, well, let's start a club. And we started playing, StarCraft and all the Blizzard games when they were in their heyday. So I think we all had this expectation that we wanted to make video games. Like video games was that thing that nobody knew about. It was like that secret that nobody was seeing yet, right? I mean, the game industry was basically non-existent. It was like the games that were out there were made by real artists that really wanted to kind of put something forward. Um, when we went into junior, no, into senior year, that's when they added the first graphic design class, and all the computers and all these new systems start coming in, and all these new classes. So my senior year was when I went into the art classes, and I took everything that I could in art because I was like, okay, art is my thing. Um, and as soon as I touched Photoshop, I was like, oh my god, this is my new.
Yeah.
And I remember I loved that class. I loved it. And as soon as I got out of school, I downloaded Photoshop, I installed it in my computer, and I was there another 6 hours, just making just random stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like really into the artistic side of it. So I think that's when like it finally clicked. And then I found out about graphic design at those like career days, right? And that was like, oh my god, I want to make video games. And as soon I went into college, I didn't have a like video game making class or any of that. So there was a multimedia class, multimedia diploma. So I went into that. I was like, okay, great. But this has video, this has photography, 3D rendering, fine arts, graphic design, all everything. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna take that. And I went through the entire um fuck. Sorry.
Like the
The
course?
yeah, the full course. There we go.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with graphic design and everything that it was about. I love the artistic side of it, the technical. I started really loving like programming and developing. We did also like sound design, so I started really enjoying that side of the career. And I just naturally just gravitated towards graphic design rather than like video games. So I just became like the second or like the furthest thing.
Yeah.
But my final portfolio had about half of it was like concept art. So it was really focused on video games, but I used to love sketching and drawing and painting,
Yeah.
but a lot of that. So it was graphic design and there was like concept art because I was like, oh my god, if I don't land in here, I want to be here. If I can't do this, then I'll do this. Um, and that's how it all started.
Yeah.
Um, just wanting to.
So growing up, you and I are the same age. We did the same things when we were kids, right? From building our own towers and putting lights in them and
Yeah,
kind of nerding out in gaming. Uh well, and also trying to hack the system at school. We did
yes,
that. But so coming from that generation, was your first edition of Photoshop a copied version from LimeWire
oh
or
yeah.
Naps are
Yeah, absolutely. There was no other way. There was no other way. That's the only way that we could get through. That's how we got
Yeah.
through college. Like we nobody paid for Photoshop,
Oh, of
and
course.
and I mean, I think it was like a necessary evil, right? It's like now it's like I've been paying Adobe for the past 15 years, 20 years, but
Yeah,
back in the day, it's like we were poor. We are like, okay,
for sure.
let's torrent everything,
Well, we
download
also
download all this kind of stuff.
right, and we also came from that generation that was trying to figure all this stuff out. It was all brand new to the world. Nobody knew any
Yeah,
more than we did. The teachers didn't know, the companies didn't know. And so it was just the Wild West, free for all, grab what you can grab and go and make.
yeah.
Um, so when you came over from Mexico and you were in 8th grade, you said you spoke English, but it was like enough to pass. What was that experience like? I don't I don't I lived in Germany for a little bit and I moved over there and I didn't have to speak any German because people would speak English. So I'm curious what that experience is like coming over here at that young age, being like, whoa, what do I do now?
Uh, oof. Okay. Not to rail this into another area, right? Um, I'll be fairly blunt. I think in my 8th grade was my first experience with racism,
Oh, wow.
straight out, like first day. Um, and I had this very vivid experience that happened to me because the first day I went to school, I spoke enough that I could defend myself. I my ear wasn't as sharp and my vocabulary was still somewhat limited, but it was enough to get through class. If it was enough to have a conversation, I just had to be like, "Hey, man, can you just slow down? Speak slowly because I'm learning." And some were really receptive to it, and they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can speak slowly for you." Um, but I have one experience during one of the classes where the teacher separated everybody into groups, and I remember uh, the teacher put me with another two students, and we put the chairs, like this in a triangle. And I talked to the kids, and I told them, "Hey, just slow down. I'm new. Um, I speak English for just a little bit." And the two of them looked at each other, and they're just like, and they just moved the chairs like this, and they just put me aside.
Whoa.
So I just ended up doing the project by myself. But that was like my first, like, oh, okay, so this is how it's gonna be. And the second day in school, one of the teachers just went into the office and said, like, "Hey, this kid doesn't speak any English." It's like,
Wow.
and they threw me into the ESL class, which was probably one of the worst experiences that I've had in school. Horrible.
Wow.
There were maybe several grades below the rest of the school. So if I was already doing geometry in my first year of junior high school in Mexico, they were doing basic basic equations. It's like this is a multiplication. It's just like the fuck,
Right.
and I was like, um, the first my first report was like C's because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do any of this shit. Like I already did it. Why am I doing it? But I was still really young. I got super scared when I started getting D's and C's. I was like, oh my god, this is bad. After that, I
Sure.
was like A plus everything, and I
Yeah.
just went. Like they gave me certificates, like all kinds of certificates, presidential certificates. I was like, this has no value. This is just a piece of paper because I'm 3 grades below everybody else, and I'm in a
Yeah.
English class. I picked up English in like 3 months, but it was it was a horrible experience. And in high school,
Wow.
I had to literally pester my teacher because they continued ESL, and they were like, "No, you're staying in ESL until you're in senior year." They had no plans to move anybody, So I every single day I was behind the teacher, like, when are you gonna move me? When are you gonna move me? I want to be in regular class. I want to be in until she got sick and tired of me. I was like, okay, fine. I put in the paper, going to regular classes. All right, thank you.
Wow. Do you
Yeah,
think do you think that that had a positive or a negative impact for things that you would do in the future?
that's a good question. It affected me negatively for a long time because I felt they made me feel like I was never enough. Um, and I know in English classes in ESL, that tends to be the case. They treat you like you're less. They because you don't speak the language fluently because you're behind everybody else. So you're just sort of like on the tail end of the entire system. You're just like, okay, well, they're just gonna be worker bees in Home Depot or something. Yeah. Um, and I think for me that was the fire to be like, no, fuck that. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
something else. And my dad is a programmer. He was an electronics engineer. He funded um electronics department in the UNAM, which is like the biggest university in Mexico. My dad was highly influential. I mean, so I had that, that in my mind. I was like, I don't want to be just anybody. It's like I want to be like my dad. Um, so I think being in being in ASL classes and being in that system, and you get thrown into this grinder. For me, it was like, no, I want to get out of here. I don't want to be in this, and I don't want anybody telling me what I can't do. So I think negatively, it impacted me negatively for a few years. And so I think definitely in my with my confidence, with several other factors, depression, came because of it. But also, I think I just had that fire from the very, very beginning when I was very little, and I never let up to be like, no, I'm gonna do something else.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I know you decently well now over a few conversations, and the work that you do now is well, you probably have always done this level of work, but I'm saying that where
I
you
don't.
well, fair. We all have our learning curves, but I guess what I'm saying is that your work now is so good.
Thank
And
you.
I'm not saying that because we're on this call. I was pleasantly shocked when I saw your work in the core circle live. It was so thorough and so thoughtful and designed perfectly for every application that I saw. There wasn't one that I'm like, I don't think that works, or I would have done it differently. I looked at it and I was like, this is flawless work.
Oh, dude, thank you.
So, but I think that comes from some of those hard circumstances that you had up front. I don't wish that on anybody. I wish that you didn't have to deal with that. I think you probably would be even further along in your career had people not held you back in those early days. But maybe that's a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the world and tell them what you do, because I think this show might be slightly different than others. While we did start kind of in our vulnerable past, what
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about today is a lot more about, design and strategy and the work that we do. So yeah, maybe why don't you introduce yourself? This is a first for the show. I've never had anyone introduce themselves.
Okay. Well, my name is Mauro Medina Susarrey. I'm from Mexico, from Ensenada, Baja California specifically. I am a brand designer and a creative director. Um, additionally, I work for companies. I've worked for companies such as AKQA. I've done projects for Facebook, for Nestle. I branded large corporations in Los Angeles. I worked in the entertainment industry, um, medical, tech. startups in a very wide variety of different industries. And I worked with people all over the world. So right now, for example, I'm working with a client in Kenya. I worked with people in Portugal, in New York, in LA, in Mexico, and Ensenada. So I've been a little bit of everywhere. Singapore as well.
Very cool.
Uh, yes.
Do you ever think back to those early days when those kids turn their chairs and just say, "Fuck you, look where I'm at now"?
uh, Actually, I haven't. And I think I haven't because I don't give a shit about them.
Good. Good for you.
um, but yeah, I think if I think back about there's teachers, there's people in my in high school and in my younger years that were you're not gonna do anything, or you're failing class, or you're gonna be some bum somewhere. Specifically my English teacher, one of them, she was horrible, and she would just put everybody down. If she didn't think you were up to snuff, she would just put you down.
It's awful.
And yeah, I'm like right. Yeah, I look at it now like, please.
Right.
Um, she was just yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. So, okay, so you're in high school, you're learning all these programs, you're becoming interested in graphic design. What do you do from there? What happens? How do you get into the workforce? Do you struggle through it? What happens? Do you freelance? Do you get
yeah.
paid in pennies to do a couple of weird things for people? What does it look like?
I think we all did. You know,
Yes.
I think we all started doing this weird odd jobs. I was like, oh, you're the graphic design. Hey, can you do me a logo? Yeah, sure, $50. Um, but yeah, I think as soon as I graduated from college, I met a really good friend. And we paired up and we worked on projects together, and we just had a really good chemistry. And as soon as we graduated, my friend said, "Hey, what if we start a studio?" I was like, "Oh, dude, hell yeah, let's start an agency." Um, Not knowing anything about business, nothing about starting a studio. Um, but we started getting jobs because we needed at least some sort of income. So I got a job in some really horrible company, just doing graphic design for a manufacturer. Uh, so it was just really busy work. I would get stuff done. I would watch movies the rest of the, like 7 hours. that's when I got. That's when I fully like finished the whole Hollywood catalog. Um, but it was good practice for me to be like, okay, get faster in working and be so really creative. And during that time, me and my friends started putting the studio together and then putting the website and coming up with a name. And we did that for about 9 years. Um, and then we had a good sort of solid foundation after like 7 years. We brought in another friend, his name was Keone, and then he started kind of teaching us a lot about strategy. And that's when my struggles really began. Because before that, before strategy, it was all about being creative and artistic and, you know, very literal with my design work. But as soon as strategy came into the picture and Jose came into the picture, everything changed. And it was unlearning everything that you got taught and relearning it differently. Now you have to think about design with structure, with some way that made sense, with putting in the forefront communication rather than artistic expression. So it was a big hill to climb. But it took me a couple of years, and then started to get a little bit better and better at it. And it wasn't after a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, then I started doing strategy myself. And then I started to really understand a lot of the ins and outs of strategy, and why it works and how I can tie that into design. During that during my time in the studio, we worked almost uniquely with startups.
Yeah.
So I had a really unique look into the ins and outs of the startup culture of design, how they would approach design, and how we had to sort of bring them back to strategy. And like, look, let's go back. Let's teach you the fundamentals of your business, and then show you how design affects everything else. And this was the very beginning of the startup culture, and we were already sort of teaching strategy during that time and working design through strategy. So it
So
was really
you're in your 20s around that
yeah,
time when you meet Jose and you meet some of the other folks,
yeah,
Keone, who is kind of teaching you the strategy.
yeah.
What how did they approach you with that? Or maybe the question is, what is it like to be told you're doing it all wrong and you need to be doing it this way? You know, like because
All right.
that's kind of the shift, right? And I learned that later in my agency career. Um, I was always thinking about it, but it was something like, oh, maybe there's something to this. No one ever came in and said, hey, you're doing it wrong. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious what that was like with those guys.
It was tough. It was really tough. I got into a lot of arguments, and in the end, I never won a single one. Um, because I was never thinking strategically. I was still very much emotional. I was still very much immature about the industry, and not having the experience of actually working in an industry or in a studio. There was a lot of things that I didn't know. So Jose had a lot of experience. Keone learned a lot through Jose and his other experiences that I had outside. So that's when I started to. It was interesting because I started putting me in a box, right? So instead of looking at creativity in this like open world, I was like, no, be creative here, right here in this little box, you know?
Mhm.
And this is the reasons why, and here's the tools, and go and do it. Um, and I think it forced me to one thing is it forced me to remove my ego. So I think it wasn't immediate, right? It took time to kind of pick at it and be like, get rid of that ego, get rid of that that sense that you know best or that you were taught a certain way. And when you start to see that strategy or another method of another way of thinking works better, that's when you start to be like, okay, oh, okay, maybe you're onto something. And then you
Yeah.
start really kind of let it, you start to let go. And then you understand that, you need to try different tools and different ways and learn different processes. And that makes you a better designer and makes you a better, even a better person because you start to understand that not every, not that it's not just the tools that you have. Sometimes you have to remove certain things or make a change in the way that you think or processes that you have to make something much much better. And so, interestingly enough, I think it's a good little segue because my wife is an architect and she does interior design. And architecture and design are very very similar in terms of process. But with architecture, you have to think so much deeper than design. You have to go through like the type of materials, costs, different. You figuring out amounts of materials. You have to figure out the space, perspectives, philosophies. Like there's a lot that goes into it, and it's really interesting because for me, it's changed some of the ways that I look at design. And when I design, now I try to think way deeper. Like you mentioned earlier, right? Like every single application looked really good, and you felt it was like a perfect execution. I think it when you start learning and seeing how architecture is done and interior design is done, you have to dive really deep, and you have to really understand. Okay, if I do this color or if I make this logo, is it going to work here, 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 here? Um, and I think it just it's a it's hugely helpful to learn from other industries and learn from other processes
Yeah.
to make it better.
Did you think it was bullshit when you first saw the whole strategy side of things? Or what was the point of contention that you were arguing about?
I I didn't think it was bullshit. I think the first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is awesome!" It was more like this mind expanding new thing. But the difficult part was making that shift. So
Yeah.
you can recognize when something is better and when something can give you a better result, but making that shift is very difficult. Um, so I don't know if there's one thing that I'd say, no, this is this is bullshit. I can't do it like this.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I, I think it was the part of doing the translation from strategy to visual design. That was my biggest uh that was my
Yeah.
biggest problem. And funny enough, like that is actually my biggest strength now.
Yeah.
Uh, but
It's
it's because
really funny how that little tiny nuance that you just described is the reason that I'm okay giving away my process to people if
yeah,
it's on the internet, on the podcast, um, on a sales call, or even to a competitor. They're like, well,
yeah,
what's your process? I will tell you my exact process, every single step, and every dollar that I charge for every minute, every hour, whatever,
yeah,
because the magic happens in the translation. It's
exactly.
never
Yeah,
that process, but that process that we kind of follow now, the core process, whether you follow it to the T or you deviate a little bit like I do, it doesn't matter. It's that translation. And I still think that the hardest part in a client relationship is when you run through strategy and everyone agrees and they give thumbs up and they're all smiles and they're all happy. And then you deliver that very first thing, that
yeah,
first mood board, that first concept, that first whatever, and they
yeah,
have that dreaded blank stare on their face.
yeah,
What is this? Why is this so different than what we thought we agreed on in strategy, whatever?
yeah,
And I think that's why it's really important if you are a person or a small business or a company looking for creative work, you should evaluate people not from their process, not from the rate that they charge, not what your friend says. It's more about their translation abilities and do I like those translations that they do? Do I
yeah,
like that? Do I like the way that they think? And that's always been a challenge for me in this whole creative process that has been evolving over the last 15 years. Um, when I first saw strategy, I was like, this is great. This is the best thing. I'm going to be able to do my work. I'm going to be able to show the clients, um, you said this. This is what that looks like. Here's
yeah,
the audience. This is why we're doing what we're doing. These
exactly.
applications, these sales channels, that's why we're doing it because you told me it. Um, there's still problems and there's still hiccups along the way. It's never perfect and it's never smooth, but it was an inflection point for me. And you and I have talked about these inflection points.
Yeah,
It fundamentally shifted how I think about brand and design and an application.
yeah. No, and I have experiences with other designers who have never done strategy, who are just they're highly creative. Um, is and I would put together the strategy with the client. I would go through every single detail and I would put together the mood boards. And as soon as I handed it to my designers, they gave me something that made no sense or
Yeah.
that completely went against. I'm like, we have a meeting tomorrow. You better fix this. Uh, and oh my God, yeah. So I totally understand. Like, I think anybody can do strategy. Anybody can go through and do all the exercises, but the translation is the toughest part. And the hardest thing is that there's no one way to do it. I think it's really dependent. It's very subjective, and in order to really be able to land it, I think you have to have like an intimate relationship with the client and understand where they're coming from, understand their industry, for you to be able to really extrapolate what they need. Um, I incidentally we end up doing a lot of coffee shops here in Ensenada, and I love coffee. Um, so I know very intimately the type of clients, the type of industry, you know, so the look and feel and emotional connections that they need to create. And it's a lot of fun when when you have that knowledge. It's a lot of fun. It's the same thing in tech. It's the same thing in any industry. I think when you're gonna work in a project from in an industry that you haven't worked in, you gotta spend some time really researching, really understanding, looking at the clients, looking at videos, looking at all this kind of stuff, for you to be able to be like, okay, I can actually design something that makes sense for this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, David Ogilvy says that in one of his books, maybe
Mm.
Confessions or something like that, but he's like, "You should be a user or a purchaser of your client's products or services,
Yes. Yes.
and if you're not, how do you know how to serve their customers?"
Yeah.
And I remember when I read that the first time, I was like, "That's right. I should be doing that." And from there on out, I started using the services of it, whether it was counseling or door and window installation. I had a door and window company as a client. We used them to install our new door in the back,
Yeah.
and it was just to be deeply involved in that. And right now, my one of my clients is a direct primary care. So they're kind of like that old school doctor that you think about, where they'll come to your house and they'll check
Yeah.
up on you if you're sick. You can call them and they'll pick up the phone and it's Doctor So and So.
Yeah.
And I've been a patient of this place for 5 years before I started doing work with them. And right now, I'm in the middle of finishing up their website, but we've already gone through strategy and we've already done their identity and websites next. And then we move on to some marketing for scale.
Yeah.
And I can just say the results from that, it's so much more gratifying and it's the results are so much better. Like the general public will like that way more.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that's fun.
and I love that. I love when clients understand strategy, when they dive as deep as you do, and they start creating some amazing content. And it's just like, oh my god, like it makes me so happy. Like
You're
I,
doing
it,
it. You're doing it. I love it.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. Because it's like your baby, you know. It's like you give birth to this identity, this brand, and you just hope that like once they're an adult, they're like, oh my god, please make the right decisions.
Right, right, right. I
Yeah.
kept you alive this whole time. Now it's your turn. Time to fly.
Yes.
Spread your wings. Like go for
Yes.
it. Um, so you're in LA and you start this with your friends and you're young. What is and this is in LA, correct?
Yeah.
What is your experience in that first agency experience in LA? What does that look like? How are you getting clients? Is the business profitable? Um, is it just networking and doing things, bobbing and weaving? What does that look like?
Oh my. Okay. A lot of the big clients came through references. Formosa Group, namely, is probably one of the bigger clients that we had. That came through my friend Mike, who was my first partner. Me and him are the ones that got started. Um, he had a friend who was he used to do asset management, I believe, in Formosa Group, and we got the tip from him that Formosa needed branding, or they were gonna start looking for a new designer because their old website was awful. Um, and we just said, "Oh my god, tell us, tell them that we're designers and we can make a website." We were just super excited. And when they finally kind of contacted us, we were so excited, and we're like, okay, let's go, let's have a meeting with them. That was, I think, amongst the first times that we pitched strategy, and it was a tough sell. It was really difficult because first they never heard of it. It was still a pretty new concept, and since they were, sort of older gentlemen from Hollywood, they were very much like stuck in their ways. So it took some time to sell them a strategy. We went through strategy, and when we finally started doing design, we put a lot of time and care into concepting and doing all the visual aesthetics, and they loved it. Um, but a lot of those clients came in through references. We did go into like networking events. We tried getting into like the Chamber of Commerce, like the typical
Hmm.
stuff. Put up a website, but we never really had clear processes of like client retention or client acquisition.
Yeah.
Um, and again, a lot of it was because we were really young. We had no idea what we were doing. Every time that a payment came in, it just got split in three rather than
See ya.
percentages. A little bit goes here, a little bit goes there, and rent for the studio. So it was really messy.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think that if we would have stuck through it, I think we would have learned and we would have made it happen. But unfortunately, like years later, it was creative differences that ended up taking it apart. And
Yeah.
I think it was a maturity of like not knowing how to deal with that and not having like clear roles and responsibilities that ultimately decide, okay, well, let's just go our separate ways. And yeah.
Yeah. I know that really well from my agency experience. When you guys started the agency and you were getting this work, did, what were the offerings? Was it just design work? And then obviously strategy comes in. So you're like, okay, we have a framework now. Did you narrow your offerings from there? Did you kind of start as that jack of all trades? We can do everything. We'll do your social and your website and your branding and all
uh,
this fun
we,
stuff.
we were a jack of all trades
Yeah.
because me and Mike's backgrounds were on multimedia design. We never said no to pretty much. We said yes to everything. So I ended up doing a lot of motion graphics. Sometimes we did photography, sometimes we did video. We ended up doing we ended up doing a lot of web design because that was the thing that was really, 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 um, really important back then. Um, Again, as an example, like from as a group, we started with identity, with strategy. We started from there was identity. Then we did the websites. We ended up doing about on nearly 12 different websites for them. And then we did photography of all the different stages and studios. We did video. Um, we did a little bit of motion graphics. So we ended up doing everything. So whenever a client came in and say, "Hey, I need a video for so and so,"
We'll do it.
that uh, yeah, we'll do it. We need an interactive website that does this. Okay, yeah, we'll do it. So I think that was another thing that for me was a great experience because I got to try everything and know the ins and outs of every single process. And that reflected today. I can, if I have a multimedia project, I'll go and I'll get my videographer, my photographer, my animator, and I was like, okay, I need this, like this, this, and this, and this. If you need to do it in 3D, make sure that it has this different elements. Don't use this and this material. So I have a lot of knowledge in all the different processes where now I can lead different teams that do just different yeah, that just have
Yeah.
artistic expressions and different parts of the industry. So I can
100%.
understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, and I can give them more concrete feedback than, I just don't think it feels right. It's like, well, I can look at it from a technical perspective and be like, okay, yeah, let's change this setting, remove this, and or shoot it differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that well. When I first got started down this path, I was just a guy who wanted to be in business. And this ties into a lot of other things that I have to say, but I don't know if I'll say it all today. Point is that when I got into business, I was like, I don't need anybody else. I can learn this, I can do it. So I
Yeah,
became that jack of all trades. I learned graphic design, not formally, but I figured out how to use Illustrator and poke at
yeah,
things, and then I learned web design, and then I learned web development, and then whatever else I learned. It doesn't really matter what I learned. Point is that that jack of all trades thing is actually kind of fun when it does come down to do a website and you are the designer on that part of the project. If you know the development side of things, you can either A, design it in a way that the developer knows how to do it,
yeah,
or nowadays with the tools that are so much better like Figma, you can actually build in the proper padding that you would like in the elements that you want. So now the developer knows the exact specs that go into that website. So when I design a website in Figma now, I'm doing it I'm doing this translation between design and development. So I'm building it almost like div tags and the proper padding that I would like, and I'm creating these components so then I can reuse them on the website and development. And if you don't have that jack of all trades mentality, you don't really know how that goes unless someone formally teaches you down the line, here's how website design should look. You should build it with margins and paddings and absolute positionings and z indexes and all that stuff, but
yeah,
I don't know that I don't know that anybody goes that deep anymore, especially with AI. They can probably just make it appear, but
yeah.
that's an interesting thing. So you guys were the jack of all trades as the agency, and I'm curious if towards the end of its life, did you guys narrow that down into like a couple of core services, or did you stay the jack of all trades?
We did start to narrow down a little bit more. I think we started focusing a little bit more on branding and doing identities and web design.
Yeah.
Anything like animations, we started using other talent, and it was more of the case that we didn't have the time. Like I couldn't, because I was the one designing everything. I couldn't be, you know 7 hours of my day doing animation, then have to jump into identity work, then jump into some editorial project. So we just, okay, like stuff that was much more time consuming, we just handed it to someone else, photography, video, and all those other parts.
Yeah, nice. And now where are you at?
Now I try to stick mostly to branding. Just um I do web design, but I don't do development. And depending on the website, I'll pull in either an out designer or I'll pull in a developer. So right now, for example, we're doing a website for a university here, UABC, and it's a big website with lots of people involved, and we're doing it very, very slowly,
Mhm.
uh, because it's very, very time consuming, not only from the politics side but also from design side, and trying to stick to a lot of the rules already written in the brand, which unfortunately the rules that were written maybe like 15 years ago. So you have to play a little bit of the game. Like, listen, yes, I'm not using the exact same color, but this is working better because this and this and this and this reason. I'm not using this topography because it's affecting negatively your communication.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's but in those cases, when I have to do a website of that scale, I'll definitely make it a longer timeline, so I have time to do a lot of explanation, a lot of education. But mostly I try to stick to strategy and branding.
Yeah. And rather than being in LA and having larger clients like Nestle, you're in Ensenada and you're doing the same level of work in a small town.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. I think I have some things to say about it as well, but I want to know what it's like because actually, what's the population of Ensenada?
Oof. I think last
It
time we were around 350. By now it's probably near 500,000 people. It's small.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny that you say it's small because the town that I live in is like 120,000.
Okay.
So
Well, maybe.
it is
I
smaller.
would say
It is
small. Yeah.
it's smaller than LA.
Yeah.
So what is the experience like there and that transition from having an agency in LA to being in Ensenada? And there's pricing difference in there as well.
Yeah. Um, I, there's a lot. Um, okay. I can go very deep into this subject and kind of envelop other parts. Um, so I'm gonna go back a little bit to my sort of life objectives, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh, I'm guessing that this is this might be very similar to many other people's sort of life objectives of wanting to leave something behind, right? Like before I go, I want to leave my footprint somewhere, and that's definitely always been my big prerogative. I was like, I want to do something good for people. I want to do something good for my town. There's a lot of issues here, as any town in Mexico. Um, but it's always been like, okay, well, if I ever go back to Mexico, I want to do something that's going to affect, the culture, is going to affect the industry, is going to affect whatever. So when I came back and I was like, I had all this knowledge that nobody really had here. Um, my idea was like, okay, well, I want to implement, this really great design into businesses and studios and all this kind of stuff. And it was incredibly difficult, because you just hit wall after wall after wall after wall after wall, and it's due because the mentality of sort of a small town, and is very different, and it's already is very conservative, and they're resistant to change, and I think it's also just part of the culture here. So I found it exceedingly difficult, and a few creatives that I really kind of got along with. Um, I tried to teach them and so like, hey, let's collaborate in a project. Let's maybe bring you into something. But I always encounter resistance, and a lot of it was because egos run really high here. Graphic design being such a new industry in Mexico, anybody who was doing graphic design was like, they felt like semi gods,
Yeah. Hmm.
just walking around like I'm this big artistic person. I'm like, dude, you're just a designer, man. Just chill
Sure.
out. um, so needless to say, I didn't get along with a lot of designers.
Sure.
I think I made enemies fairly quick. In me trying to be like, hey, look at this, man. Look at strategy. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Get
What are you
out of here.
talking about? What the fuck is this?
Yeah. And then, trying to charge my rates from LA into, a small town here in Mexico. Like, everybody was just looking at me like, why am I going to pay you, $1,000 for something, Um, it was incredibly difficult. So I had to learn to navigate, um, uh, my quotes. So I had to really lower them or really be able to. So explore different ways that we can get like payments through. Um, so for example, if I charged $1,000 for a client, I would like, okay, let's just make payments of $100. And
Mhm.
even that,
Yeah.
like, oh my god, dude, you're breaking the bank. I was like, dude, it's just $100.
Right. Yeah.
But but it is difficult here. It's like there's people make from $300 to $500 a month.
Sure.
Uh, you get it. It's very difficult, and that's not the case for everything. There's definitely people who make a lot more money, but um, it's either jobs that they've been there for many, many, many years, or they're brand new industries, or they're industries that been around for a long time. Regardless of like, it's always it's always been the case that they don't want to make the spend of in something that they don't understand.
Yeah.
Uh, and it hasn't been until this last few years that that has started to shift. Design has become a much bigger thing here in Ensenada. There's been a lot more designers. That designers are coming out right now. They're finally understanding strategy. They're finally starting to kind of narrow down like their own style. The designers that were coming out when I came back into the United States, they finally mature enough to be like, okay, they're doing now really good work. Now I see it. I was like, okay, these guys are finally getting it. Like these guys are
Mhm.
really getting better. Um, and now clients are starting to pay, more like the rates in San Diego and LA, and they're starting to pay a lot more for design because it's finally being understood that design is a key part of your business.
Interesting. I mean, that's really cool. That's gotta be a hard shift because in the States, everybody already knows they need it, so the demand for our services is already relatively high. And then
Yeah,
you're always gonna deal with the people who really know what they're talking about and the people who just need the thing. Just give me the thing. I need to keep going with my business.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
do you feel
So
like there's a little bit more heart in Ensenada right now where they do care about that deep connection and the maybe the cultural history in their business because it's been around for a while? That's why they like that strategy component?
they're starting to. It's definitely they're definitely starting to. It's still new. Um, but what's happening is there's a lot of people that come from the states, or they come from Europe and other places. They learn something new and they bring it into Mexico,
Mm,
and that's always been the case with I think a lot of people from Mexico have done that, and I think we all have that in common. Where it's like we want to go and learn and become experts somewhere else and bring it back to our country and really try to better it because we know that it needs it.
mhm.
Uh, and what I've seen personally is that happening. So, for example, a lot of the coffee shops, a lot of breweries, a lot of small businesses, restaurants, they've taken concepts from other places around the world, and they okay, let's build it here and let's build it differently. And the older businesses that have been around for the last 50 years that have never changed, they're like, oh my god, I need to adapt.
We have to
Be-
do something.
yeah, because have many of them have already closed, and the ones that are still around, it's just because they still have a lot of those old clients that come in and keep them alive, but they're being taken over by younger brands. So some of them are adapting. Some of them are now opening up to like, okay, not teach me design, teach me strategy, teach me this stuff because I need to, I need to survive. And
That's
and it's interesting.
interesting.
Yeah,
I feel like in the US, all the small businesses are trying to adopt what the big businesses are doing. And what you just described is the big businesses are like, "Oh shit, if we don't change, all these small businesses are going to take over." So
yeah.
it's kind of inverse on how it's doing. It feels a
I
little
think
bit more like an organic movement. I like that.
I think that's healthy. Healthy. capitalism.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's, essentially that's how it is, right? Either you change or, you adapt or you die. Um, and it's interesting seeing it here in a small scale because, like, okay, new businesses come in, new ideas, fresh, sort of perspectives. And then the older ones are like, oh my God, we need to do something about it. Otherwise, we're going to die.
Yeah.
And some of them, they stick to their guns and they just maybe change their image and it works. And other ones completely go under. And yeah, I think it's definitely like the inverse from the States, right? Like everybody over
Yeah.
there, there's a very, very clear line of like corporations who are incredibly difficult to die, and then small businesses that most of them die.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even the
so
medium businesses can die. Overnight,
yeah,
they can die.
and here is the other way around. Is the smaller ones are taken over.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really cool, actually. I like that.
yeah.
Um, do you notice any trends in the which industries are moving first in this direction with some new design, with some strategy, with some new application websites, things like that?
You know, well, because it's Ensenada, I think mostly it's the food industry that's really taken off. Like they're really doing something different. And the reason is that a lot of the universities here have a culinary arts as a career. And there's a lot of chefs that graduate, a lot of cooks, a lot of so the food industry is huge and it's amazingly good.
It's
Just
awesome.
it's incredibly difficult to lose weight here. Um, it's not just the tacos, it's everything. Um, so, but you have all these really young kids that are coming out like with these different ideas, or they're some of them are pretty well traveled, and they come back of like, oh, I'm gonna do a fusion of this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make Chinese food different, and they do really interesting projects and they do really, really beautiful restaurants. And some of them do last a long time. Some of them do die, but it's always new ones coming out every year. Every year, if you stop going out for 3 months, all of a sudden there's 10 new restaurants, or
Wow.
five new coffee shops. Now there's like matcha bars coming out, and it's like it's all kinds of stuff. So the food industry here is huge.
Yeah, so food and beverage is kind of the first mover on this, and
Yeah, yeah.
do they actively reach out to you, or are you reaching out to them? Are you trying to network your way into, like, "Hey, who's leaving culinary school? Hey, can we work together?"
No, it's like it's still very much through references. Um, like I mentioned, because it is a small city, a small town. There's still this idea of businesses going to the older sort of designers that have been around for a long time, that had never learned strategy, or they don't really understand it as well as somebody younger, and they end up overcharging the small businesses and create a brand that's not really well connected to their audience. Um, so that's something that happens very, very often here. But I have seen a small shift in kind of people really looking for new designers, and I think that's where I've been coming in lately, uh, where people are starting to see my work, because I spent many years, always in different coffee shops and making a lot of friends and going to breweries and stuff like that. People recognize me, and the only difference with me is that I never push my services on anybody. So I never go out and the first thing that comes out of my mouth, I'm a graphic designer. Do you need help? Um, one of the coffee shops that I did a brand for, I spent years going to that coffee shop. They were really good friends now. We go to their house, we play Catan, and we do all the kind of stuff. But it took a long time from them meeting me to me doing their brand.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think the way that I do things here in Ensenada is that I try to build a relationship before I do anything. And I know sometimes, their brands are like, "Ooh, dude, change that,"
Yeah.
but it's it's always come naturally where it's like, "Hey, Mauro, you're a designer, right?" Yeah. Can you help me? I was like, "Yeah, yeah, let's put something together." And
You're like, I've been waiting for years for this moment.
something
Thank
like,
you.
but I think it's always been the case of like, I never tried to be pushy. I never tried to be like, dude, you need new design. Oh, hey man, you need new photography. So I always try to come in with a lot of respect, respect what they have, and if they ever, have the need, or if I hear over here, hey, we need something new. It's like, hey, I do design.
Right.
I just kind of poke my head around, and I'll do like a quick mention, but I never go out of my way to really be like, hey, here.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm learning some of this as you talk, and I'm also learning it outside of this conversation. Um, when I was signed on by this doctor's office to do this work, I asked for a lot of money and I asked for a long timeline to do it
Yeah,
all. But I had known this doctor and I'd been a patient of this doctor for 5 years.
yeah,
And I had this hesitation to take the work because I didn't want to ruin the relationship that we had. I really liked that relationship and I liked that I could literally pick up the phone and call my doctor. When I had the accident with my daughter and it was chaos and my wife is on a helicopter with the kid flying up to Portland and I'm driving behind them, I'm on the
yeah,
phone with my doctor and I'm talking to this person very personally and I didn't want to ruin that with business. But if you had asked me, I'll be generous, 4 years ago or
yeah,
further back, it was business, baby. It was all work. It was all about the income. It was all about, don't get me wrong, I formed the relationship with clients during that time, and I really enjoyed that because I like talking. I like going deep with people and understanding them and their past, their desires, their future states, whatever, all that fun stuff.
yeah,
Um, but it was business first. And in the last couple of years, as I've switched in my career path, as I've matured, as I've gotten older, I'm looking at it more like relationship first and that business part second. And it's very gratifying. And I've told this story before. I don't know where I told it, but I told it somewhere. When I presented this identity to this client, they cried. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I've always had pushback. And I'm kind of going all over the place and weaving around here, but
right, yeah,
you know, the struggle in the agency world was going from the things that we knew in our head and the things that they had told us to that first design concept, to not having to pay team members to go back through and iterate and have V1, V2, V3, V4 final V2, V4,
yeah,
all of that stuff. Um, I did one mark for this practice and I didn't even do a mood board and I didn't do concepts. I made the mark and I put it in context. I applied it to a couple of things and I went like this and I showed her and her assistant cried. And I told them just a brief story. I didn't create a big PowerPoint presentation or a slide
yeah,
deck. As I showed them a couple of pages of the application of it and I told them a quick story, they just were in tears. And it was part the connection that I had made to the mark,
yeah,
to them, but it was also this connection that they didn't know how to express from themselves. They were like, this hits so close to home and it's everything that we want. We just would have never gotten there without the process that we went through and you making that and you understanding us. But that ties back into that relationship first. I knew that 3 or 4 years ago, like, oh, this place would be so much better if it looked like this, because that's who they really are.
Yeah,
But if I had approached them in the first year that I was a patient there, it might not have gone this way and gone so smooth.
yeah,
So I really appreciate that, and hearing your story and hearing you say that exact same thing, it's like,
yeah.
no, that's the right, it's the right
No,
move.
it is. It is. And I've seen it. I think proven several times here in Ensenada, which is um Corvus namely was one. Corvus and Navi, those two
Hmm.
are the and and both times that I did the brand, the owners cried. And Corpus was a really special, very special client, um, because that brand started uh, as a memorial for their son, and throughout the entire process, I got to know the owners really, 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 really well, and really in a really close way. And their son used to be an artist, like he used to draw and sketch, and he used to be really good. And I remember the owner, Samuel, he came and one day with his sketchbooks. And he's like, look, I want you to look at the sketchbook so you can, kind of be inspired. And I started going through and like tears started, running down my eyes. And it was because I could see, you know, a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness, a lot of things that were in those sketches. And it was something really, really, really powerful,
Hmm.
and something that I did not expect. Um, and as I was working in this project, it was really interesting because I felt like I really tapped into something different. Um, when I showed the final project with everything, they absolutely loved it, and Samuel was really teared up, and after that brand, we decided to do a video to go along with it. So we put together a film, and I wrote the film, I directed it, I did everything alongside with my videographer, and it was never really meant to be like a commercial. From a marketing standpoint, it was a failure, but from an artistic point, it was this gorgeous piece.
Masterpiece.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was all about artistic expression, about the brand being at the forefront of creativity, and it was this um, very abstract piece. Now that I think back into it, right, I don't look at it as necessarily as a failure from the marketing side. It really was like this standalone piece that did not have to have anything to do with the brand. um it was just a way to really honoring, I think, the brand and honoring the message of the brand, um and had nothing to do with marketing. It was just this really beautiful piece, and it was tears all around.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because we really, um dove into something that was really unknown, and I ever since I did that brand, I've been trying to recapture that. And
Yeah.
I try to really have a good relationship with my clients and really try to pick at, you know, their thought process, their emotions. So for me, it's whenever I do strategy, I have to have them with the cameras. I have to be looking at them. I have to be looking at their reactions. So for me, a lot of the strategy is extrapolated from their visual cues. Like
Yeah.
whatever it is that they do is like, okay, I'm I'm going the right way. I'm not going the right way.
Yeah.
You know, I'll throw a joke in here and there, or I'll start
Yeah.
kind of going into more of a personal side of them to really be able to extract those emotions. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes the work that comes out is highly highly emotional and really close to their hearts, and they're like, oh my god, this is incredible. You know, it's not just a logo, like this is my story.
Yes.
And hearing that is
It's
immensely
awesome. It's
gratifying. Yeah.
so good. It is the best addiction ever.
Yes.
And the I've had clients both in my freelance journey and my agency journey and now whatever I'm doing, whatever I call myself, who have liked the identities. They've liked it.
Yeah.
They thought it was pretty. They thought it was cool, whatever. But I've only had one client that I've connected with the way that you're describing, and it's that medical practice, and
Yeah.
that I don't wanna do anything for anybody else unless it's like that because,
Yes.
I mean, it just again, this is and maybe it's different because you're in Ensenada and that cultural piece plays into it a little bit more. In America, right? Business is business and everyone just wants to fucking make their gold mine and get out,
Yeah.
right? And oh, people are telling me how to do brand strategy now. Okay, I'll do it. I got to do social now, so
Yeah.
people just want their things. But I think that is the client that I want now. I want that client who just they're like, I have a story to tell. I don't know how to pull it all together. I want to be vulnerable. I want to get
Yeah.
naked. I want to pull my pants down, all that stuff, and just share everything about it. We've talked about that in the circle.
Yeah.
Um, those are the people that I want to work with and I want to partner with. So hearing that story from you is awesome. I'm
Yeah.
happy you
Yeah. I
shared
think
it.
you know, and that puts me, I think, in a well, it makes me think, how the industry is shifting yet again right now, right? Um, and there's the ones that are there's some designers and agencies that are all about the money. I'm gonna charge 100,000 and I'm gonna make this incredible piece of work. It's like, okay, that's cool. It looks like everything else, but sure. Um, but now, I think there's a big cultural shift where it's like, no, now it's all about relationships. For a time it was all about like conversations in social media, and it was all built around conversation. And now I think it's much more than just emotions. Now it's about relationships,
Yeah.
and you have this like close relationship with your client because it's what really affects design in a positive way. It's
Yeah.
not just pretty images now. It's like, okay, am I really telling their story?
Yeah.
Am I really telling? Am I really gonna connect? Like I think the brand needs to feel like a person. It needs to feel like, when somebody goes into the store, it's just like, oh my god, this guy gets me. This brand gets
Yep.
me.
Hmm.
Uh,
Have you done a lot of strategy work in the past and realized either very quickly or towards the end of the process that these people have no soul? They don't give a shit about it. They're just going through the motions,
yeah,
all those
I,
things.
I've had those. I have those. Yeah, where I've encountered that as of late, it's in the tech industry.
Yeah.
I feel the tech industry is just dead. It's absolutely startups and industries are some of the worst places.
Soulless
They're
monsters.
Yes, yes, they have no feeling, and they're stale, they're boring, incredibly difficult to brand because you can't get anything out of them, and they end up look they end up wanting to just look like a cookie cutter brand, right? Like just like the next person, just like the next person. So
Mhm.
it's hard to sell them on a new idea. It's hard to sell them on like, dude, it's like, let's talk about relationships, let's talk about your experiences, let's talk about emotions, right?
Yeah.
um and tech is unbelievably cold. um
Yeah.
So I
It
think that
is. I've been told by tech people in the past, like, "Oh, you brand people, you guys are all the same. You just say all these words. You think it's meaningful, you know." They don't think that there's any real strategy and tangible metrics that can come out of brand work. Um,
my answer to them has always been 5 years.
yeah. See
I'll,
you in
I'll
5 years,
I'll see you in
or
5 years.
not.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, cool. You got a few years of runway.
And I think some of them can make it without any brand work. They can just put pretty things up and they can say shit, and I think some of them can make it. And the ones that do make it are the ones that are really good at what they do,
Yeah.
and they are listening to their customers and they're providing them the right features and the right tools for them. I think you can make it all the way
The
without doing brand stuff if you're doing all those other things right.
I think the tech brands that are gonna survive are the ones that are gonna be helping people.
Yes.
Uh, people the those tech startups that really understand their culture, that really understand their users, and that they're there because they want to help, not because they wanna
Make
put
money.
up a nice little message and get another $15 million in their pockets. It's the people who are legitimately okay. We really want to help our culture, our community, and do that through tech. And those are the ones that I'm like, okay, yeah, I admire
Yeah.
this. I'm gonna work with them. But the rest of them, mostly they're just looking for their next grant, their next,
Yep.
injection of income.
100%. I mean, in our industry we have a lot of software. We have a lot of tech.
Yeah,
And one of the biggest hurdles for me in the agency, and maybe now but maybe not so much anymore, is CRM, project management, workflow software, and I've gone through everything under the sun. I've used Asana, I've used Monday, I've used Notion, um, I don't know what else I've used, Slack, all those things, right? And they're all just weird and disconnected, and it's just like patched together. And I use this one software right now. I won't mention the name, but it is the closest thing that I have seen to a one-stop shop for CRM, project management, communication tool, client dashboard tool. And it's not super expensive, but I pay for it annually and I got it and I spent the time to set it all up. And you realize that don't know don't know the industry that they're serving,
yeah,
or they're trying to serve too many industries, because I understand that this tool can be used for photographers, animators, um, web designers and developers, branding agencies. It can be across the board, but they just don't deeply understand their customers enough to know what tools they need. It just scratches the surface where you're like, I kind of need this tool. I kind of want this tool. It's got pretty branding, but it just doesn't get me there. And you're like, I'm this close to dropping them and going back to freaking Google Sheets and just the cheap free things. Cause why do you pay all this money to these places and spend the time to learn the software and build it out so you have the workflows that work best for you? And then you're just like, they don't have this one tool that I need, or the insight. And I'll just say it, one of the things that I'm looking for is on the forms feature. If somebody is going to go through my form and drop off, I want to know where they're dropping off. I just need
yeah.
some insight. And they're like, "Oh no, that's not something that we care about here. It's not on our roadmap. It's never going to be on the roadmap." And you're like, "Why not? Don't you care about me? I'm paying you."
Yeah.
And what are your customers? What are you talking about? You don't want to do that.
But you're not on the top tier subscription.
Okay, I'm one tier down, but you know,
Yeah.
and they have one of those community forums where you can go on there. Oh, I'll tell you another story, and I will blast them on this because this fucking pissed me off. But
Yeah.
the point is, they have a community forum that you can go on there and you can ask questions, you can talk, and um, I go in there and ask questions, and it's just this kind of bullshitty answer type stuff. They just kind of kick you down the road. Oh, we'll think about that. You know, if you're making a software for branding agencies and
Yeah.
graphic designers and photographers, and I don't have full control over the way my type is displayed on my forms, I'm pissed off. At least give me some CSS controls where I can manipulate it and make it my own, right? Nope, we're not going to do that. We don't think it's important. Well, guess what? It's very important to me to stay on brand as you go through my flow. But here's one of the things that they did. They their forms are quite beautiful. And at the very bottom of it, it would say powered by and their name.
Mhm.
And when I first signed up, it was this big, right? Little tiny
Yeah.
thing, and it was gray. And it was just like opacity was dropped just a little bit. So it was like pretty unnoticeable.
Yeah.
One day I open up my form, and below my form is a full page advertisement for this company with a big giant banner image. And then the
See?
words down below say, if you enjoy this experience, refer a friend and Kevin will get 25% kickback or whatever the language was.
Yeah.
And I blew my fucking top. And I went on the community forum and I blasted them. And I was like, this is so fucked up that you are advertising for your own company on my website. It's like I felt so invaded and like somebody had broken into my house and slept with my wife. It was just
Yeah.
dirty. I
Yeah.
hated it. And
God, yeah.
it took me raising a stink in that community for, I don't know, maybe a month before they decided to make the change. And then what they did is they took it from a full page ad and they made it a half page ad. And then I just kept bitching and bitching and bitching. And finally it's back to this thing, but now it's in color. So people will see it. And I'm just like, this is not how you do business. This is just tech being tech and
Exactly.
sneaky.
Uh,
And you have
yeah.
zero heart. You don't give a shit about your customers. And I was so fucking mad.
Yeah. There's it's always been the case of like what's gonna make us the next dollar, right? The next
Hmm.
big money. So it's yeah, it's incredibly infuriating. And one of the I think one of the worst offenders is when you go into technical service help and you're like, dude, I'm having issues with this one thing, and you get a robot, and I'm just like, God damn it, I'm not gonna sit there for 30 minutes waiting for this stupid robot to understand that it doesn't understand anything that I need. And I'll just like, I'll spam, talk to human, talk to human, talk to human, talk to
Yes.
human. I just spam the shit out of it
Yeah.
until an actual person shows up. I was like, hi, I'm sorry.
Oh.
But like, yeah, all right, now let me explain how you can help me.
Right. Let me tell you how you
I,
can
I
help
do
me.
that. I do that all the time. And I was just like spam, just like talk to human until somebody shows up. I was like, I
Yeah.
refuse to use AI.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, that whole AI thing is interesting. You feel like by resisting, you feel like you're the person who didn't want to get the internet or the cell phone or something, right? I feel like, my dad or my grandparents, I'm not putting one of those stupid
yeah,
things in my pocket.
yeah, yeah,
But on the same Well, I
It,
guess on the other side of the argument, you're like, I don't want to do it, but I have to figure out how to implement it somewhere, somehow. And what
there,
is my ethical side of that coin, right? Where do I stop and say,
yeah,
it's not going to do all that stuff for me?
I think it's a slippery slope. You know, you don't want to be, you know, Grandpa Simpson screaming at clouds, right? You don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, like you also want to adapt at least at some level. Um, my biggest gripe with AI is the fact that it's a probability generator. It doesn't understand. It's an incredibly stupid machine.
Mhm.
It's just giving you probabilities. It is just an algorithm. That's all it is.
Mhm.
ChatGPT algorithm. It's not gonna tell you everything. It's not gonna be accurate. So whenever I see somebody using ChatGPT, I grill the shit out of them, and I'm like, dude, don't know what the fuck you're doing. Go read a goddamn article. Um, and you know, and I do use ChatGPT, and I use it sparingly. You know, sometimes I use it for strategy when I'm like, okay, you know what? Take the content from this website, take my strategy, distill the information, let me take a look at it, correct you where I need to correct you, and then just help me create some copy. And then I have to revise it myself.
Yep.
But that's you know, I utilize it strictly as a tool just to distill information because that's it's good at that.
Yeah.
It's not giving me correct information about most anything. Um, but I think it's a matter of it's a matter of ethics. Um, when it comes to AI, I think it's understanding where you can use it, how you can use it. Um, my wife, for example, she uses it to do post production for her renders. Um, and generally, that's because one, we don't have the time to do post production. Two, it's just it. Sometimes we just need to get stuff out really quick, and it's like, okay, let's throw it onto Sora, and it's just like, hey, just do a basic cleanup, fix the lighting, make it look natural, and it does a good job at it. We still have to go in and fix stuff, but it's fair enough, and it's just good enough that we can send it out.
Yeah.
I think my gripe lines in the people that think that this is the absolute future and they use it for everything, and I fortunately I know some like studios that they're fully into it, like, and to me it's crazy. It's like, dude, have you did you not go to school? Did you not learn anything in the past 15 years and now you're like fully getting into AI to do everything that you already know how to do? You're not providing any value. You're just
Right.
information from somewhere else and remixing it and giving it to your client. It's like that's not worth what you're charging. Um, so I think it's really understanding the human side and how to incorporate AI just to make it a little bit better, not
Yeah.
to and and that's what's the horrible thing right now is just like it's no guardrails right now, right? I love I love the cat meme stuff. Like I love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I love
like,
the
yeah,
Yeti,
yeah,
videos, right?
and,
Drinking
but then
beer, jumping out of airplanes. You're like, cool. For entertainment value, it provides.
exactly. But then you have the ethical side of it, whereas um, you know, okay, so I just wasted 100 gallons of fresh water to look at a stupid cat video uh about a fat cat going through the holes. It's like, okay, well, that cost about you know maybe 100 trees and God knows
Right.
how much gallons of water just to create that stupid thing. So then it's a matter of like, do I really want to consume this? Like, yes, it's fun. Yes, it's a nice little dopamine hit,
Sure.
but this is costing us everything
Yeah.
and us the next generation. And people don't realize how much this is costing us.
Yeah.
It's
I
and it's terrible to see.
I'm super interested. Amit Shetty said this to me in our show not too long ago. We were talking about Gen Z and I guess Gen Alpha technically, but more specifically Gen Z. And I don't have a ton of experience with Gen Z.
Yeah,
And I was curious from his perspective if I'm going to tie this into AI.
yeah,
If this was not a question I asked him, but I'm tying it in now. If they are going to be huge users and consumers of AI, and the way that he kind of answered the question in that conversation was like, you have to think about this generationally. You know,
mhm,
our parents, they had to work really hard just to survive. The next generation, you know, they still had to work hard, but they had some new things, right? Our generation comes in, most of the groundwork was already done for us. We just had this new technology to play with, and we've created insane things with it. Their generation already has everything figured out for them. They don't have
yeah,
to do anything. They just open up the phone and it's right there, whatever they want.
yeah,
And the way that he answered after that was like, the things that they care about now are way more in line with what we're talking about. They're talking about human connection and they want to be understood and they want to be heard. It's not so much about producing things and building industry and things like that. It's more about that in-person experience. And so I'm wondering from your perspective if you think that they will be users of these tools or if this is just our generation still being fucking crazy and exploring with technology. Is that generation going to go back to some of the older time things where they want relationship based stuff, they want to spend time with people, they want to meet with people, or are they just going to consume this AI shit and be, you know, half of their brain's going to be gone all day?
no. So this is something that I learned um, from architecture and for interior design, and incidentally, now I've been looking at it in design. Uh, but this happens in life. Life is cyclical. Life is absolutely cyclical. It's a circle. It goes back, goes back, goes back, goes back. Um, and every time that it goes back, it's new, and it has its connections to the past, but it's remixed with new technology, new ideas, new philosophies, right? Um, minimalism, came back in a big way. Now it's going away. Now it's maximalism. Then it's going to be something else. Then, 50s comes back and it's new and it's brand and it's different. And the 70s come back and it's like, oh my God, 70s were so amazing. Um, so I think you see that in every aspect of life,
Mhm.
design to brands to communication. And I think generationally, you do see it. Um, when I see, for example, my son is 11 years old. Now he's gonna buy his new iPad. Um, there's a different ways of looking at this, right? It can be controversial to say, oh yeah, I get my kid an iPad. And, how could you,
Sure. Yeah.
or, they're routing their brains. Yes. Um, but you have to also respect the other side of this is their generation and they are the digital generation. These kids grew up already with a chip of like they take a phone and they understand how to do everything. And so you can't really take that away because it is part of their culture. It's part um of their
Their
mentality.
wiring. Yeah.
Yeah, they're wired differently now. But you have to now restrict a lot more. Now you have to you have to set limits. You have to understand what they're capable of doing with that iPad and understand that you can block things until certain stages in their life and until they can understand certain themes, they can understand certain technologies or certain things. So, for example, with my son, he's had his iPad for about a year, like freely, and he just uses it for video games. But he has no ability to talk to anybody, no video chatting, no WhatsApp, no chatting with anybody anywhere. Um, and I know that as soon as he starts to grow up, I was like, okay, now you can chat. Now you can do this. Now you can do this other thing. But he needs to get to the mature age, and now he's a lot more responsible. I think if I would have done this, a few years ago, if he was in the iPad, he wouldn't drop it. He
Yeah,
wouldn't be listening to me now. Since he started to mature, now after 9, 10, if I tell him, hey, clean your room, he puts the iPad down immediately, and that's what I ask him. So it's never been a case now of like, oh, he's not doing his homework, he's failing, he's doing whatever. No, he does everything he needs to do, and his prizes time in his iPad.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and as he progresses, he gets more access. So that's the way that we are handling that. I know there's parents that say not until you're 15, not until you're 18.
sure.
And my perspective in that is like, well, you're sort of cutting off um their tech literacy, and they do need that tech literacy because it is part of their generation. When they grow up and they're in high school or college and they don't know how to use a computer, they're gonna be the only one,
Yeah,
the only one out there who
behind.
has no idea how things work. So and it's a balance, right? You don't know exactly where they need to start and when they need to stop, but just sort of kind of you have to fill it out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Well, I do hope. I mean, we do the same stuff, and our boy's going to be 9 this January, and the stride between 8 and 9 to 9 and 10 is a
yeah,
big difference.
yeah, it is.
If he had his iPad full time at 8, which he had more often than maybe I would like, but he still
Yeah,
had it, he was just a little shithead, right? You can't get him off the damn thing.
yeah,
And and now it's a lot different. Even if it's just the TV or something or another, right? It's like, okay, I'll put it down, I'll go brush my teeth and move on. And I have to I I was raised by parents who were like, "No, not until you're this. You can make your own decisions when you move out," right? And I don't want to do that with my kids, but it's still like in my blood, right? Because that's how I was raised.
yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is that it oh man, I'm going to tie in a very weird thought. And
Uh,
then um
we still have to circle back to the original.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes. The weird thought is this. When I was growing up, even like in my teens and early 20s, and like drinking became a thing,
yeah,
and you knew the kids in high school who didn't drink because they would go out, I'm sorry, who weren't allowed to drink. They would be the ones that went out to parties and got obliterated, right?
yeah,
And they'd take their clothes off and they were just doing all kinds of things.
yeah,
But the kids who drank, or their parents allowed them or turned a cheek to it, they were just kind of like, this is a part of what we do. And so
yeah,
that same belief goes into this thing, like, let the kid have the devices, because when they are older, they're not going to be like, "Oh, it's my first time." And they just like they have this
I go overboard.
reaction to it where they don't know what to do. They overconsume and then they're not going to their job because they're staring at an iPad. Let them do it
Yeah,
when they're 10. Fine. When they're 18, they're going to be like, "I've been doing this for 18 or 8 years." So it's
it's
that
always.
type of mentality.
I think it's always about setting limits with kids. It's always setting limits, and even as an adult, learning to put limits on yourself and other
Yeah.
people and your relationships. Right. That's hugely important. But if not to go into a whole other thing, I think circling back to the original idea of um, life being so cyclical. Interesting thing. I actually watched a video about Starbucks and how they're crashing, and they they don't know what to do at this point. And but they started exactly where they should have started, right? We're creating relationships, creating, this communities around coffee, and it was great. And Starbucks was this amazing brand, and it was for many many years. Now it's starting to become more political. It's starting to be, they're union busting, they're doing all these awful things. They're starting to forget their audience
Hmm.
just to make the just to make a dollar, right? Just to make a little bit more money. I think if it doesn't die, they're gonna have to go back, and they're gonna have to understand that, like, we went through the corporate thing, we did the whole thing. Now we need to circle back to, like, okay, no, we need to start treating people right. We need to start treating our workers right, and and you see it in different brands. There's brands that have done their sort of refresh, and they go back to their original objectives. I think, and that's when a rebrand is done right. There's studios that look at the brand as a whole, and they extract the original strategy, their objectives, how they got started, and they're like, let's go back to that.
Hmm.
And they do a fantastic job of like redirecting the focus of these giant corporations. Like, dude, it's right there. Your answer is right there. Let's just go back to that. You
Yeah.
know, and it's really interesting. It's really kind of refreshing to see when good studios do that. I was like, dude, yes.
Right.
Like, and I think that's a nice sort of segue into, I think, maybe like the ethics of design and that sense of responsibility. I view design as this incredibly important part of life, not just because I do it, but because it is so monumentally important in every aspect of business, and in really be able to define how to connect with your audience, with your demographics, with your inner soul. I think brands are hugely important. I think you have to look at it from a design perspective. You have to respect other people around you, and us as designers, we have that ability to look in depth within a brand that has so many connections to their users and their consumers, that you know we are. I read this in a book, Mike Monteiro, right? Designers are the gatekeepers
Yeah. Yeah.
of of brands and technology and all these different elements. If we let something bad through, we made that damage, we created that damage, right? And we affected communities in a negative way. Facebook does this all the time. um and I think it's up to us designers to be the ones to say no, to be like, no, I'm not working in that brand, no, I'm not making that decision. It's like, it's like, if I'd rather you fire me than me having to work in or get this thing through the door. And I think we wield, this gigantic responsibility. And I think there's a lot of designers need to understand the amount of power that we have, of influence.
So, do you think that there's a big ethics problem in the design community?
I think there is now.
What do you
I,
think that comes from?
I think it comes from the conversations we were having earlier, about how it's becoming about just making money.
Yeah.
Well, the way that, uh, and I'm gonna focus on the United States. The way the United States is going right now, aside from politics, um, you're not gonna be able to have a decent life unless you're a millionaire.
It's already like that.
Exactly, and
That's why we're all hyper focused on making money and we'll sacrifice our souls,
exactly,
right? Because it
exactly.
takes you have to make a half a million a year just to take a weekend off or something like that.
Exactly. And it's, and unfortunately, I think it's not necessarily a case that people consciously want to make that decision. I think it's for many of them it's a necessity. They have
Yeah.
to look at it as like, what's the next big project? Next project I'm gonna charge 50,000. Next project I'm gonna charge 100,000. Then the quality goes down. You know, payments go up, but quality goes down because they need to build more because it's not enough money. Um, so I think a lot of the ethics go out the window, and not to fault, the workers in Facebook. I think they get paid over $100,000 a year, uh, to release bad shit
Hmm.
into the world, and unfortunately, I think many of them they turn a blind eye to the stuff that they're doing. I'm gonna touch this really sensitive part, but ICE is a perfect example of that. I hate that whole thing, but they're getting paid an absurd amount of money. They're getting their debts relieved and all this kind of stuff. And many of them, they just turn a blind eye. They turned off everything and they just become drones. And, you know, there's a lot of haterism, well warranted hate. But also, I think if you really try to understand where they're coming from, like it sucks. I'm sure that outside of all the racists and all those bad people, there's people in there that are just like, just want to do this for 3 months. I just want to do this for 6 months. I just want to
Yeah.
get my stuff paid and get out of here. I'm sure there's people in there like that, and it's sad. It's incredibly depressing. And I think, yeah, I think not only design, I think there's just an ethics problem in general. Um, Unfortunately, design is suffering from it, where now AI is being utilized in every possible place wherever they can, to make the job faster and charge more. Um, so I think it is a big problem.
Yeah.
And
And it's a
yeah,
big problem. I mean, like what you're saying, it's a big problem outside of design, but you notice it because we're in that industry. Um, I'm going to ask you a question that I don't think you can answer. How do we fix it?
sticking to our guns.
It's fair.
There's no other. You know, okay. We've had this conversation about resilience, right? I think I consider myself a incredibly resilient person, especially after everything that I've been through. And I've lived, on $20 a week, and I had to pay, rent and gas and food and living off like dollar menus, um, for years. And but one thing that has always been constant in my career and in my life is that I never wavered. I think I always stuck to my guns. I always knew that I was like, this is the right direction. This is the direction that I'm staying in. Um, and I have always stayed open to the possibilities, whatever they may be. So always open to learning new skill sets, new perspectives, new philosophies, new whatever. Um, and that's always kept me fairly fresh in my perspectives and my work. And just having that ability to just, no matter what happens in life, it's just I'm still gonna stick through it rather than fall with them and be like, oh, I'm just gonna become a drone in Facebook or wherever. Um, Say, okay, no, I'm sticking to my guns.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody has that ability. Your sometimes your hands are absolutely tied and you just have to make a bad decision. Um, but as soon as you're done with it, go back to what your intent was.
Mhm.
I think it says a lot when you are consistent in your message and in your objectives that someone else is going to pick up on it. And if you can affect someone else positively, someone else is going to be affected by that person that you affected. And hopefully, that becomes, bigger and bigger. And I think that's where it's important to speak out and to, be more public about the information that you put out and the work that you put out, and make sure that it's always, it's always responsible, it's always ethical, it's always, you explain why you did it, how you did it, um, because you want to inspire everybody else, and hopefully they're gonna follow your example, and they can
Yeah.
stick through to how they're moving through life.
Yeah. And I think that's the part of the question that it wasn't necessarily clear. It was, how do we get everybody else to become a little more ethical? But to be fair, maybe the actions that they take are in line with their ethics. And being that drone on Meta is part of their ethical beliefs, right? And so who am I to say that that is the wrong way? I just happen to believe that I'm more in line with what you're talking about than the
Yeah.
other stuff. And it's stuff that I've been bitching about for a very long time. And it
Yeah.
circles back to one of our other topics of, design in a small town.
Yeah.
For years and years and years, I've been beating this strategy thing down my clients' throats.
Yeah.
And part of doing that was so that I could help shift the industry towards, we need to be more strategic first and upfront and slow down and think about what we're doing. And then all of a sudden it was co opted by all these other people. And now they offer strategy. And you're like, oh, now you just diluted all the work that I've been working towards, because your version of strategy, and this is, I got to say this slightly,
Yeah.
it's just my perception of their strategy, right? Maybe I don't like their translation. Maybe I don't think their translation's correct. Um, Maybe I think they're just walking through the process and delivering the answers that the client gave them, right? And so maybe that's my problem to deal with, not theirs. But um you can just you can just see, hear, touch, and feel something that is done right, and you know that it's done right. And when I saw your work in the circle, I was like, that guy that guy knows what he's doing, and he did the right steps, and he knows the connection, and it was deep and it was impactful, and I appreciate that. And I've seen other work that have done the exact same strategy, and I'm like, there's none of that. I don't see it, I don't feel it, I don't hear it, I can't taste it. Like, there's zero connection to any of it. But they might
Yeah.
have done the exact same thing that I would have done. It's just maybe the translation part. So I don't know where the fault line is, but I do know that I have my preferences.
Yeah.
Let's just
Uh,
say it like, let's distill
I,
it down to that little piece.
I it's always, design is always, and that it's gonna end up being highly subjective no matter what, right?
Mhm.
Um, this interesting thing that happens here in Ensenada, and I've been noticing this. The more projects I do, um, is that as soon as I finish a project and it goes live, five other projects similar to the one that I did come out.
Really?
Uh, it happened when I did Corpus. It happened when I did Navi. It happened when I did Skanda, and it's gonna happen with this Rufian. Um, and there's a trend that happens. Um, and you can see it because it here in it's a small town. There's the downtown is really small. Um, and it's an interesting phenomenon that I've been seeing. All of a sudden, I finished Navi, and there's another school like right up the street that has a very similar look and feel. I was like, That's interesting. And
Wow.
and I can feel like they just copied my shit. But it makes me happy to actually see that, because then I realize, okay, I'm making a positive change.
Yeah.
Like there's to understand that a good image goes a long way.
Mhm.
And I think, and when it comes to strategy and design, um, again, it's highly subjective, but I think it's a matter of like make it so undeniably better than everything that's out there that people are gonna strive for that.
Mhm.
I may or may not, make it better. If they make it better, amazing. If they don't, that's good. Because they're doing an effort to get
Sure.
there. Um, and that's what I like to see. And for me, that's big. That's a big part of my drive to always be trying to top myself. I'm like, okay, I need to do something better and bigger. Um, and because I wanna take that, I wanna have that effect in my community, and I start to see that that's happening, and it's like, dude, that's great, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what I wanted. Since day one that I came to Ensenada, that's exactly what I wanted.
Right. What is it? Rising tides raises all, and
Yeah,
that's the right idea. Yeah. Unfortunately have some pessimistic views in there, and as I'm getting older, I'm trying to do away with those views. But it is true. If everyone's doing it, it's good for everybody. It's good for the businesses. It's good for us. It's good for community. It's good for life experiences that we have as we're walking through that community with our friends and our families. So it is a good thing.
I shared a story on my personal Instagram, and I love the quote. It's like, and it said, "I'm not a pessimist. I'm a well-informed optimist."
Yes, yes, yes. That is great. I love
Yeah,
that.
like, I love that.
Yes.
Yes,
That's the new positioning of my pessimism right there.
yes. I'm a well-informed optimist.
I love it. I want to just ask a couple of questions about your process and what strategy looks like. Is it like I'll just say the question. Do you run core as is, no deviations from it?
No, I think I do plenty of deviations. I mean, I have the basic structure, right? I always start with attributes, but I'll make changes um, depending on the client. Basically, I make the biggest changes in the client profiles. I try to never do the same, um, because I think the equation for defining your clients is enormous.
Yeah.
So you have to understand the industry. You have to understand their clients. You have to get that information, and you get a really good piece of it in the attributes exercise. But you still have to get the bigger picture.
Mhm.
Uh, and depending on the objectives of the business, it's how I craft uh, that specific exercise. Um, but I always put my own spin in the work. I think that it's a huge responsibility to do strategy, because as you're having these conversations, you're going through defining their culture and defining their voice. Not only do you have to be listening to all the different keywords that they're telling you, you have to put them into context.
Mhm.
You have to contextualize it, and then you have to be thinking about the business side of it and be like, okay, this keyword works, this one doesn't, but it can work for this other thing. Um, and sometimes you have to nudge them into a direction that is unknown for them,
Mhm.
that that it's gonna work, that that if we do this and we utilize this specific keyword, it's gonna affect the rest of them. So there's a bit of push and pull where
Yeah.
you have information from the client, but you also have to give them those walls. I'm like, no, no, right here. ah, right here, stay in this lane.
Yeah.
And because you, as you're doing this exercise, you're building the brand in your head. The,
Oh
pictures
man.
are coming into your mind. It's like, yes, this is gonna work. Yes, this is, because I need to craft the narrative this way. I need to craft the attributes this way here. So there is a little bit of nudging. Um, and that's why I said, there is a sense of responsibility, because if you nudge them into something that they totally do not,
Yes.
then you fuck up the entire thing, and then you're at fault.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the ethical part of it. That's a moral part of it. That's a responsible part of doing strategy. Of like, and you you can't take sides, and you definitely cannot throw your own perspectives into it. It has to be fully.
I know. It's so hard.
It is. It's so difficult. Um, but
I
yeah,
can
I think,
think back to I can think back to one client in particular
yeah,
that well, here's the hard part about strategy and I'm sure you've experienced it. When you have a client that doesn't really know what you're doing,
yes,
participating in strategy, they just say words and they don't think about it and they don't dive deep into it and they're not really thinking about the adjective that there should be saying in that attributes exercise. So
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of times I have omitted the attributes exercise from it in general, and I'll pull adjectives from the narrative as they're talking, and I'll just
mm,
put it in a bucket over here. Um, and I'll let them just tell me about their target audience groups, and we'll try
mm,
to break them down and
interesting.
personify them and things like that. But I can think to one client in particular, they just they were just wrong on their target audience.
Yeah.
100%. And they were like, and this was a, startup pre-revenue. So they
Oh,
were like, this is our audience. And they named four of them. And I sat there and I tried to like nudge and push them in a
yeah,
direction. And it finally got to this point where I'm like, they're not, they don't understand who their people are. I'm going to have to tell them who their people are. So I had shifted the conversation from them talking to me talking, and it started to cross that ethical boundary a little bit, right? And that
yeah,
maybe that responsibility boundary. Because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm telling them who their audience is. I'm telling them what their business is. This isn't, I don't know if this is right, but I want to steer them in the right direction. And it was, it took 3 or 4 hours for all of us to finally kind of agree
yeah.
close enough where these groups were and who these people were, and it was just a struggle. And I find that a lot of people fall into that category where they haven't really thought of who their people are. And maybe
Yeah.
that's my fault because I work with a lot of startups or pre-revenue companies. But even the ones that are established, they have no idea who their people are. And it's just that, like you said, it is a push and a pull, but gosh, you brush up against this line of me telling them
It's
their
difficult.
business.
I've dealt with clients like that. Um, so I think that's, I've never really had to pull this card of like, well, you're the one paying me. So, uh, but um, I, I I do a lot of I do I walk them through strategy before I do strategy. So I go through each category and like culture. Let's define what that is and how that is going to affect your business. Let's go through the clients, how we're supposed to define the clients and why this works and why this. So I usually in the first interview is when I realize these guys are gonna be fucking difficult,
Yeah.
and I take my time to go through and explain explicitly why we need to do it this way, and then I'll show them examples. Like we're gonna go from here. This is how these attributes are gonna be used in the experience, how they're gonna be used in your clients, how they're gonna be used in everything else, and some of them like. they become really receptive to it. Like, okay, oh, okay, that's really cool. Yeah, okay, let's do it. And yeah, then there's the other ones that are just like flat out like, no, just I just want the logo. And
Yeah.
that's when usually those difficult clients are just like, turn off. All right, just give me basic. Just give me basic keywords, and I'll put up a list. I'll go through a website, like Tesara's website. Just give me a
Yeah.
bunch of 100, or ChatGPT. Give me
Yeah.
300,
Sure. Yeah.
and I'll just like, all right, how about this? 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 And that way, I still do a little bit of nudging, but it's a little bit easier for them to digest it. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, in those cases, it's just like, okay, let's just go through the motions. Let's go. Okay,
It's
get the call,
hard.
get, and make sure that you're happy with it. Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna find clients that are just flat out do not understand.
Yeah. It's a
Okay.
it's a tough one. We at the agency, after we had nailed down our version of core,
Yeah.
and it's like a mix of stuff we made up, core, and like brand strategy from the future. Um, we went through this period of trying to figure out where the strategy gets placed. And I don't mean in order of operations, but in the sales process,
Yeah.
because strategy is notoriously hard to sell.
Yeah.
And unlike what some people say, you can't just shove that down their throats. Um, so sometimes we'd sell strategies, sometimes we would sell the thing, and we would call it discovery, and we would just wrap it up in that first month of the engagement. First month, we're going to spend time on discovery, and then what we would go through was strategy.
Yeah.
And I don't, I can't ever tell which one works best. It's very client dependent. A lot of times when we would sell strategy as a standalone thing, people seem to engage a little bit more, but then they were always shocked what would come out the backside of strategy. They couldn't make the leap from that piece to this piece.
Yeah.
Um, when we sold it all as one big giant process, it was maybe the same thing. It was just it's a very hard thing to do. Um, One of my more recent clients, they hated strategy. They just hated it so much. They
Oof.
couldn't agree on their target audience. They couldn't agree on their attributes. They couldn't agree on their goals. And so you just kind of limp along. But again, that's where that translation comes in. And then I was able to translate it well enough to, we didn't do identity work for them.
Yeah.
We went right into marketing. I was able to translate it well enough so that the marketing actually worked pretty all right, but I think it could have worked 5 times better if we could all agree on some of those things that went into it. So, that's where the question stems from in terms of how you run your strategy. And what I just got from that, and sometimes I do forget this, is as you're going through strategy, really take the time to explain what every little thing is inside of just one exercise. Because you do it so many times, you get to this point where, like, all right, we're going to talk about culture, customers, and you just kind of go through it. You're thinking,
Yeah.
oh, they will know what all of this means.
And
They
they
don't know.
never do. Never
No
do.
clue. Yeah. Uh, well, what do you think? We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes. How did it go so far?
Great. I think we can go on another hour.
Yeah, I think we could. Yeah.
I think we could just.
Um, yeah. Well, I think what we should do is have another one of these. I think we should do that. I
I
think
love
it's
it. I love it. Yeah.
super fun to talk to you, and I love hearing the insights. And as I'm a part of the community a little bit more, and there's way more Latin American influence in this, there's a lot of really interesting cultural pieces that I haven't thought about. So it's broadening my thinking talking with you and Jose and
Yeah.
Marseille and Felice, all and Federico, all these people,
Yeah.
I'm having some really cool growth personally from these conversations.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. Well, what do you say, Mauro?
I say we're done at this for today. But I don't know. You want me to say? Uh,
This
I'm
is
not.
your time to say whatever you want to say. You can give yourself a shout out. You can say something wild and crazy. You can do whatever you want. Once we say our goodbyes, I'd love to just stick around for a couple of minutes afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Honestly, I'm not sure if I think I said a lot of really big thoughts that I had, but I think primarily, I think a lot of my philosophy in design and my expertise and everything that I do stems around, I think, looking at design as this unbelievably important aspect of my life and life itself. Um, I have a lot of respect for it. I deeply love this job, and I think it's given me a gigantic sense of purpose and responsibility in understanding how it affects people at an emotional level, and it can also affect business. You know, from a financial standpoint, from growth standpoint, from connecting to people. I think that we wield a lot of power, and I think that being aware of what you are wielding is hugely humbling,
Mhm.
and I think it gives me at least a sense of responsibility and a sense of um, I think it just an emotional connection to people, and I wish that people uh, hopefully gain that knowledge and gain that perspective, and whatever it is that they do, that it really um affects positively your community and everybody who is around you, and hopefully you know you can continue to do stuff that's responsible for the world, because ultimately
Yeah.
we are in a place where we need that kind of perspective, and we need uh less anger and figure out ways to fix it before it gets, you know, in a place where
Too
we don't
fucked
want.
up.
Yeah, we don't want it to be. So staying true to what you're doing, and look at the optimistic side of it. Because
I
yeah,
love it. I love it. You're doing it, man. You're an inspiration and I appreciate you and I appreciate your time and sharing everything that you've shared, being vulnerable. It's something that I think more people need to do. So thank you so much and I appreciate you.
no, and thank you for giving me this platform. I really appreciate it. This is the first time I'm actually speaking on a podcast.
Wow.
I'm
Very
nervous,
cool.
but uh, I loved it. I loved this opportunity. I'm eternally thankful for you giving me this platform, to speak. I highly enjoyed speaking to you. I think we get along like swimmingly. I think we can talk for hours. Um, but yeah, this was amazing. I love it. I can't wait to do it again. And
Great.
hopefully,
Well, let's do it again. You're welcome back anytime.
thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Mauro.